सबका स्वागत है। जैसा कि हम सब जानते हैं और हम लोग यहाँ इकट्ठे हुए हैं, जिस तरीके से हम हर साल और मेमोरियल लेक्चर मनाते हैं, आज हमारा जो विषय है, सब्जेक्ट है लेनिन, गांधी एंड M.N.Roy, these relevancy of our contemporary world order। और हमारे बीच प्रोफेसर P.R.Ramanujam साहब हैं। आप फॉर्मल वाइस चांसलर हैं इग्नू के और आज पूरे प्रोग्राम का जो अध्यक्षता करेंगे, चेयर करेंगे, सीनियर एडवोकेट हमारे सामने संजय पारिक साहब हैं। आप भी अपनी बात रखेंगे और मैं चाहता हूं कि आप प्लीज हमारे बीच अरुण माझी साहब हैं जो पुराने रेडिकल ह्यूमनिस्ट हैं और CFD के मेंबर हैं। मैं उसे भी रिक्वेस्ट करता हूं कि आप आइए अपना स्थान। अब मैं बुलाना चाह रहा हूं मिस्टर सुरेश जैन साहब। आप भी आइए प्लीज, और इंडियन रिलेशन इंस्टीट्यूट के लाइफ ट्रस्टी हैं, प्लीज आप भी आइए। मैं M.N.Roy साहब को भी बुलाना चाहता हूं और प्लीज आप भी अपना स्थान ग्रहण करें। आप CFD के जनरल सेक्रेटरी हैं। आज हम सब लोग M.N.Roy साहब को याद कर रहे हैं और उनकी जो सोच, जैसा वो सोचते थे कि भारत कैसा हो, भारत में लॉ एंड ऑर्डर कैसा हो, भारत किस तरीके से होना चाहिए, उन सारी चीज़ों को आज भी वो रेलेवेंसी है उसकी। और जिस तरीके से आज की हुकूमत काम कर रही है, तो हमें लगता है कि ये तीनों जो हमारे जो सब्जेक्ट में रखा गया है, वो तीनों आज के संदर्भ में बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट रोल अदा करते हैं। तो मैं सबसे पहले प्रोग्राम स्टार्ट होने से पहले मैं बुके के लिए, फ्लावर बुके के लिए सबसे पहले मैं बुलाना चाहता हूँ प्रोफेसर साहब के लिए अशोक भारती जी। आप आए और प्लीज हमारे प्रोफेसर साहब को बुके से मैं सीनियर एडवोकेट संजय पारिक साहब के लिए मैं एडवोकेट पदम कुमार को मैं बुलाना चाहता हूँ। जैन साहब के लिए और M.N.Roy साहब के लिए मैं खुद कि आप इंट्रोडक्शन करें और इंट्रो दें M.N.Roy साहब के बाद आप वहाँ से कुछ
P.R.Ramanujam जी। First of all, it is very eventually that where the native place of M.N.Roy, actually born at district 24 Parganas in West Bengal. Brought up in the district Midnapur in West Bengal. Eventually, that is nearby my birthplace, only 4 to 5 kilometers from my birthplace. The name is the village is Kheput, under police station Daspur district Midnapur. And in this district also born Vishwachandra Vidyasagar and just in only almost 22 or 30 kilometers within the radius. Raja Ram Mohan Rai also born on that place. Originally, M.N.Roy, name is Narendranath Bhattacharya. He was the founder of Communist Party of India, one of the founder of the Communist Party of India. And also later on, he founded the Radical Democratic Party. The speaker will speak all the things. I think that today's situation, such situation we are passing in our country, I know those are Democrats, those are believer in Gandhian philosophy, those are believer on socialism, communism, all of us we are in pain. Even though the destruction of our heritage, our contribution of our great leaders, the country is going to reverse journey. What we achieved in progressive manner, scientific manner, nowadays has come, all are going to erase from our educational syllabus, introducing unscientific everything. But greater contribution of M.N.Roy is book materialism. In 1940, in the month of July, that book was published first. It is a landmark book, I think so, in Indian philosophy also. Because from the very beginning of ancient period of philosophy, in European philosophy, and also he discussed about the Indian philosophy also. Why I am talking about it? The basic question, what is the crisis in today? He wrote in his book, that is Upanishad. Upanishad is not non-believer of any god and anything that is based on the materialism. And he also wrote in his book how the materialistic philosophy of Sankhya, philosophy of Charvak is destroyed by on that time the Brahminical forces. Again, we are observing the development of philosophy, development of science, development of materialism, now are going to destroy it. What is the relation with Mahatma Gandhi? Mahatma Gandhi, in his freedom movement and freedom struggle, he introduced experience with truth. Experience of truth means experience of philosophy. That philosophy believes that Gautam Buddha, Ahimsa. It is relates to it. Later on, M.N.Roy introduced the radical humanism. Humanism is the basic tenet of Indian philosophy, which we were also in Mahatma Gandhi, and to some extent, Mahatma Lenin also. Lenin, the greatest contribution, state and revolution on that period. But revolution means for the haves not, revolution means for the oppressed. All the three historical personalities, they also believed against the oppression, believe in the peace, believe in the humanities. Now this is my introduction. I think it is our professor, P.R.Ramanujam ji. He will deliver the very important memorial lecture today, containing the relevance of M.N.Roy Mahatma Gandhi and Lenin also. Thank you.
I have the privilege to introduce the chair for today. Sanjay Parekh sir, a senior advocate of the Supreme Court of India. He has appeared in several well-known cases including petitions dealing with the mandatory declaration of assets and criminal antecedents required of MPs and MLAs while contesting elections, the voters' right to choose, none of the above nota, illegal surveillance through telephone tapping, challenges to Section 66A of the IT Act, amongst others. He argued a case for rehabilitation of the people displaced due to the large dams at Tehri, Sardar Sarovar and Omkareshwar, and forest rights of Dungriya Kund tribal community in Niyamgiri, Kalahandi, Odisha. Deaths in Kalahandi, Bolangir and Koraput, both before the Supreme Court and the NHRC for a period of nearly a decade. He has been vice chairman of PUCL for many years. Mr. Parekh has edited 2 books, Extraordinary Justice and Taking Human Rights Forward. He has written another very important book called Courts and Hunger, Understanding the Man-Made Disaster at Kalahandi, Bolangir and Koraput. It was released in Delhi a few months back by Justice Narasimhan of the Supreme Court. It is going to be released in Bhubaneswar and Odisha tomorrow. Sanjay Parekh is an exceptional talent also when it comes to poetry. His Hindi poetry book, Tum Ho To Hu and Kuch Na Kaho Is Sanj speaks of his exceptional talent when it comes to the creative arena. We are proud to have you, sir, here to preside over the lecture today. Thank you.
Good evening. नमस्कार सभी साथियों को। आप सबका मैं प्रेरणासा क्लब दिल्ली और सिटीजन्स फॉर डेमोक्रेसी और इंडियन रेलेवेंस इंस्टीट्यूट की तरफ से हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूँ। Today we have gathered here to listen to M.N.Roy Memorial Lecture by distinguished scholar Professor Dr. P.R.Ramanujam. He will speak about 3 great personalities of first half of 20th century: Lenin, Gandhi and M.N.Roy, who have played a vital role for emancipation of humanity from oppression, both economic and political. I am pleased to introduce Dr. Ramanujam to this august gathering. Professor Dr. Ramanujam has been in the field of open, online and distance learning for over 3.5 decades with the domain expertise over curriculum course design, staff training, learner support systems development, monitoring and evaluation system, as well as quality assurance and standards and protocols. His pioneering efforts have brought out, among others, several innovative, socially relevant curricula, engaging distant online learning programs of high quality, and impactful staff development activities in India and 55 other countries. He is as conversant with face-to-face classroom teaching as with online education, where print medium and the emerging technologies play their roles in content creation and dissemination. Having worked at several developing and developed economies across continents, he follows global best practices in all educational transactions and setting standards. Professor Ramanujam began his career by joining the Indira Gandhi National Open University as a founding faculty member in 1986. During his time at this premier public institution, he has led the Staff Training and Research Institute of Distant Education, the Inter-University Consortium for Technology-Enabled and Flexible Education, and Indian Sign Language Research and Training Center as director for over a decade. He was responsible for implementing the international schemes, Rajiv Gandhi Fellowship, involving COL and IGNU, as well as IICPA, UNESCO, IGNU capacity building programs in 55 countries. Most recently, he served as the IGNU's Pro-Vice-Chancellor, where he facilitated the growth of 4 of the university's biggest schools of studies. His professional contribution was significant in the university's launching of pioneering capacity building, staff development programs, PG diploma in distance education and Master of Arts in distance education, and modernizing its infrastructure, which yielded quality support services to over 3 million students. Professor Ramanujam also oversaw the modernization of 14 regional centers in Northern Zone that were under his supervision. Professor Ramanujam has been widely recognized for his role in establishing and developing IGNU as a global leader in open learning. His expertise has been actively sought not only by the Government of India, but also the Commonwealth of Learning, the British government and UNESCO. He was review editor and chief editor of Indian Journal of Open Learning over 10 years and has served on the advisory boards of 4 international journals of online digital open distance learning. An impeachable research experience matches his stellar global reputation as an administrator and academic leader. Professor Ramanujam has served as visiting professor at the Fund University of Germany, University of Central Lancashire, UK, USA's MIT University, Western Kentucky University, Gallaudet University, the Open University of Sri Lanka, and the Addis Ababa University of Ethiopia. Outside the academic setting, he has been a resource person, expert, consultant for the World Bank, UNESCO, UNICEF, WHO, and other international organizations. The pinnacle of his global academic partnership was in 2007 when he won the prestigious UK-India Education and Research Initiative Award to study the use of distance education for sign language users in India. The research study concluded with the establishment of the Bachelor of Arts in Applied Sign Language Studies at IGNU, which subsequently led to the establishment of Indian Sign Language Research and Training Center, sponsored by the Government of India in 2011, which he added for a year and has traveled widely in Asia, Africa, Europe, and North America. He is also a creative writer in English and Tamil, has written 2 novels in English, 2 in Tamil, and 2 non-fiction books in Tamil. Thank you.
The introduction has been given to the subject and to the speaker, so I think we should start our proceedings because it's a very important lecture and it's going to take some time. I think without wasting any further time, we commence the.
First of all, I must record my appreciation and thanks to Mr. Pancholi and his colleagues for running Indian Renaissance Institute and deciding to invite me to give a lecture, Roy Memorial Lecture. And I must start with the confession that for too long I did not turn to M.N.Roy, although in 1983 I read The Historic Rise of Islam when I was doing my PhD at the Central Institute of English and Foreign Languages. After that, I wanted to read more about him, although I heard from time to time that he was a man who disagreed with none other than Lenin in building working class movement in India and his assessment of Gandhi. On that, I was searching for more information, but I did not get it. Of course, I read almost 10-15 volumes from collected works of Lenin during that period, 1917 to 1921-22. Afterwards, Lenin was not well and the contribution was not that much. But I could not find that one. Incidentally, I used to mention about M.N.Roy to Sanjay Parikh sir. So one day he brought me a book, a very old book, and very faint printing, and then he gave it to me. I gave a book on M.N.Roy. If you get some time, you go through that. I just turned the book. The very first sentence struck me like a thunderbolt. Then in a few days, I completed that one. Then I decided that I must do something to really do some justice to satisfy myself that I know this outstanding intellectual revolutionary who has been almost forgotten by the scholarly world, and of course the popular politics doesn't have any use for him. And then I started looking for an opportunity, and very recently when the book release function was there at the Institute of International Law, where Courts and Hunger, written by Sanjay Parikh sir, was released, I met Mr. Pancholi and other colleagues. Then gradually that idea was developed into a kind of memorial lecture, and I am here. In the meanwhile, I got some books. I immersed myself at least for 2 weeks to go through whatever I could lay my hands on. My wife, who is here, Selva Kumari, she used to tease me, "Are you preparing for the board exam?" Then I said, for board exam I never studied. For every paper I used to just go through only overnight, and I got good marks. Beyond that I didn't have any kind of academic ambition. But M.N.Roy is a person who should be read as you read Lenin, as you read Marx, as you read Engels, and any other great philosopher or a revolutionary. And therefore, my interest in M.N.Roy should not be trivialized by comparing my study with studying for board examination. And she laughed. Actually, it's a long time, too long, that we have neglected outstanding thinkers, contributors and intellectuals in this country. And it is time that at least first we revive their contributions. And rightly that institute, Indian Renaissance Institute, has been named. And we are still waiting for that renaissance. M.N.Roy repeatedly said 2 things. Indian history is yet to be written, and Indian Renaissance is yet to be realized. Both are true. Therefore, I thought I should think about a topic which would interest and which will also be meaningful. Then I started reading what Lenin thought about Indian freedom movement, what he thought about Gandhi, and how M.N.Roy was invited from Mexico, their first meeting, etc., etc. They are all available in the memoirs. And it was the greatness of Lenin to see in this young man extraordinary talent, honesty, and courage. And he had long discussions. Lenin had already drafted a thesis as to how to conduct revolutionary movements and freedom struggle movements in the backward colonial countries. There were colonies, British colonies, French colonies, and even German colonies. But he could not get time to devote as much as he could have, and then he thought M.N.Roy was the right person. So, to put it, before I go to the formal lecture, he told M.N.Roy that Indian communists or Indian socialists should work with Gandhi, because Gandhi is a revolutionary, in as much as he has been able to give the all India character and mobilize millions of masses against the British. Eventually, you establish your ideological hegemony, and then let socialism take over in India. But M.N.Roy had different ideas, because he was a man from the real India, colonial India at that time. He knew what was happening. And he argued with Lenin, if we accept the leadership of Lenin or the Indian bourgeoisie, then we are likely to be completely submerged because of their outlook, their worldview, and we will not be able to emerge as a progressive force. So their arguments were drafted. Lenin asked him to draft his views in the form of a document, and both were placed in this international conference of the third international. And M.N.Roy was modest enough to suggest to Lenin, I will withdraw my thesis, and whenever my ideas are needed, I would contribute. But Lenin said, no, my thesis and your thesis would be there. Both will, I am recommending to the Congress that both should be accepted. And people should draw their own conclusions, because I am not involved directly in the anti-colonial struggle, but M.N.Roy is. And therefore, both the documents are equally important, and we must place them, and they should be respected. So that's the greatness of Lenin. But the greatness of Lenin also says something about the greatness of M.N.Roy as a young revolutionary intellectual, totally committed, totally fearless. Otherwise, any normal reaction from an Indian is to be reverential. Oh, I am talking to Lenin. How can I disagree? That kind of fear was not in M.N.Roy. When I read his books, I saw that intellectual courage, that conviction, and that ability to articulate like a star. I think he is a super intellectual. And whatever super means, he was on par with revolutionaries like Lenin, Marx, Rosa Luxemburg, and other outstanding leaders. When I read M.N.Roy, I thought he is talking to us today on 28th April 2023. Many of the ideas are so relevant, so current, I thought I should put down in this paper. So this small introduction, I thought, is not part of this lecture, but it is necessary to warm up. So let me once again thank the Indian Renaissance Institute for having given me this opportunity, and I will start my lecture. Good morning to all of you. I think as we have said it initially. Good evening. And it is a written lecture, and therefore from time to time I may move away from this written document whenever necessary, and we will have just 15 to 20 minutes for discussion at the end of the lecture. Karl Marx wrote 11 theses on Feuerbach, one of the materialist philosophers of Germany. And the 11th and the last thesis says, the philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to judge it. The three leaders I have chosen to reflect on today, in their own ways, philosophers and practitioners in changing the world on various grounds and through various methods. Lenin was absolutely convinced as a Marxist about the need and inevitability of changing the world order, which was based on class divisions, private property, profit motive, competition, and therefore constantly at war with the working people of the world. By his illustrious mentors Marx and Engels, Lenin was guided by dialectical materialism as a method, historical materialism, and revolutionary action was not just for academic interest, by the workers, peasants, and later on soldiers, because soldiers were not part of the original plan. At the end of the First World War, when the Russian workers ran away from the front asking for peace, it was the alertness of Lenin that they should be part of the revolutionary action. He said, let us also take the soldiers. Then there was a very, very serious argument whether the soldiers should be involved. They said they have already voted. How they have voted? they have voted on the field. They have come from the battlefield on field, and this is their voting, endorsing our Central Committee's resolution. And that's how he included the soldiers who are all sons of peasants, sons of poor parents. And that's why you have these three components: workers, industrial workers, the proletariat, the Russian peasants, and the Russian soldiers who left that imperialist war and came and joined the Bolshevik Party. And therefore, their fight was against the ruling upper classes who were only looking after their selfish interests. This was in Tsarist Russia. Lenin had the same understanding about the capitalist order elsewhere outside Russia and the world also. Gandhi, his 21 years of various experiments with methods of fighting a racial, colonial and unjust system in South Africa, returned to India in 1950. Till then, Gandhi didn't do anything within India, although he had a lot of struggles in South Africa. It's a start to fight against an unoppressive colonial system on moral and ethical grounds, using non-violence and satyagraha as his weapons. And at the same time, he never forgot the exploitative economic system that favored the colonial rulers, whose only weapon to put down the mass movements was violence in the form of laws, courts, police and army. Around that time, M.N.Roy left India as an 18-year-old militant nationalist in search of procuring arms from different countries, particularly from Germany, in the struggle against British colonialism. Roy, as a member of militant groups like Anusuman Samiti and so many others, he got inspiration from none other than Arvind and also Indira. That he left the country in search of getting support from Asian and European countries to overthrow the British colonial rule in India. He wandered through different parts of the world before he became a global Marxist intellectual revolutionary who started the first communist party outside Russia in Mexico. And his activities were noticed by Lenin, and then he extended the invitation to Roy to come and join him in Moscow. He went to Moscow and he worked with Lenin, joined Lenin. Lenin admired him a lot. He contributed, Roy contributed significantly to the world communist movements in China. His famous book, Revolution and Counter-Revolution in China, is a masterpiece. I think everyone who is interested in Roy should read it to see the kind of rigor and knowledge and ability to understand a totally new country and its social dynamics and the revolutionary forces and counter-revolutionary forces and how he has given a beautiful account, effortlessly. So that's a masterpiece actually. And he returned to India only in 1931 when he was arrested and jailed by the British government. In between certain things happened, it will take a long time to talk about it because in 1924, Lenin died. After the death of Lenin, Roy had so many assignments at the international level, but by 1930, I think he had problems with the leadership, and then he was kept outside that international. Then he decided to come back to India. Despite their different backgrounds and experiences, there was one singular factor that united all the three leaders, Lenin, Gandhi and Roy. Their love for the oppressed people and resolve to put an end to the exploitation of the poor. Lenin always tested his understanding of Marxism with reference to the class position of any issue or any reality. Gandhi never wanted class war. It's very important. And if at all one has to describe Gandhi, Gandhi believed in class collaboration. He thought people like Birla, Tata, all of them can be morally converted and a trust of the capitalists can be created so that the class war can be avoided. I am yet to see whether that's going to happen or not. But Gandhi's love for the common people, for the poor people, and his resolve to fight against any injustice, that is unquestionable. So that is the factor that unites Lenin and Gandhi and Roy also. He had one mantra. Whenever I do something, I have to ask a simple question, whether this is going to help the poorest of the poor in India or elsewhere. Then I am right. He didn't have any training in dialectical materialism or philosophy or any serious history. But through experiments, through struggle, he wanted to do something which will be of value. M.N.Roy followed Marx. That's a very long journey, very interesting journey, but I am just making it short. He followed Marx and Lenin. Yet another uniting factor of all the three personalities was they had the conviction and courage to fight for the truth. M.N.Roy, while basically following Marx and Lenin, went beyond them, beyond Marx and Lenin later on, in search of new alternatives to deal with new realities, particularly after the Second World War. Let me briefly reflect on where they differed and where they conquered and how we can bring them together in the 21st century for the survival of humanity, democracy and justice. I may not say much about Lenin again, it is in the lecture, but after successfully completing two revolutions in 1917, Lenin had a huge challenge. That was, he expected the revolution to succeed in Germany, and German revolution would be followed by France, Italy, and even Britain, and so many other European countries, and the Central European countries would follow. Once that had happened, then within a short while, because in 1929, the Great Depression that shook the USA would have also followed. There was every chance that the world revolution would have succeeded without much effort, and that would have helped not only the Russian revolution, but all other backward countries fighting for their freedom. Unfortunately, the German socialist revolution did not succeed, and the reasons are many. For 6 years, German working class parties, mainly three parties, Social Democrats, Spartacus, the Communist Party, and the Independents, they were all leftists. They all believed in socialism. They all disagreed with capitalism. But when a revolutionary situation arose following the First World War, there were so many arguments and disagreements, and the main reason for the failure of the German Revolution was, other than Rosa Luxemburg and Spartacus group, all of them, including outstanding leaders like Kautsky, Weinstein, and all of them, they started defending the fatherland. For the communists, for the workers, for Marx and Lenin, you don't have any nation. Nation comes only temporarily. They are all internationalists. And therefore, the call given by Lenin was, you turn the world war, the national war, into civil war. You turn your guns against your own bourgeois leaders. You fight against your own governments. Turn this into a civil war, revolutionary war, and let there be a world revolution. And for 6 years, it's a very interesting thing. I read 1,000 pages on German revolution and the reasons for its defeat. They had every opportunity to succeed immediately after the Russian Revolution, maybe simultaneously. But the advantages they had to study so many books and so many theories and the democratic values they cherished also had the weaknesses. They went on debating and debating and debating. I wanted to quote a particular passage where an ordinary worker said, when everything is happening for days together, months together, our leaders are only debating and debating and debating. Whereas the workers were ready to go for revolution. They were impatient throughout Germany. And Germany at that time had 60 million population, 6 crores. Out of 6 crores, 2.2 crores were workers with socialist views, socialist commitment. And they had so many workers' unions, trade unions. With all these, had they given just one call, unitedly, all the 3 major socialist groups, revolution would have succeeded in Germany in a matter of days. When it did not happen, Russian Revolution had so many problems. Got completely isolated. 18 capitalist countries, they wanted to go and strangle that young child, the socialist state. Lenin had to fight against 18 capitalist states and save socialism in one country. Because socialism in one country is a major debate even today. It was not the original idea. Socialism succeeded in one country, but others were not following it. Does it mean that you will throw the child in front of the wolves, the capitalist states? They would strangle in no time. So he wanted to defend. And of course, after 22, he had a series of strokes, and then it was Stalin and his followers. Ultimately, they saved the Soviet Union, socialism in one country, and then within another 10-15 years, they had to fight Second World War. That's another epic story. I'm not going to touch upon that. But the tragedy for the German Revolution was outstanding leaders who were as competent and equal to Lenin, like Rosa Luxemburg, born in Poland, but became a leader, world leader, Karl Leibniz, and all of them had outstanding contributions. There were dozens actually, a few dozen leaders. These people were killed on the steps of the German parliament, and they were thrown into unknown places. Rosa Luxemburg was thrown in the pit. After 3-4 months, she was discovered, her body was discovered, and it was very difficult even to identify. With great difficulty, they identified it was the body of Rosa Luxemburg. Karl Leibniz was shot dead. First he was kicked and then he was shot dead. So all these tragedies followed, individual tragedies, but the biggest tragedy was world revolution did not succeed. And therefore, whatever complications which arose later on with Soviet Union, within the Soviet Union, I think is part of the failure of the German Revolution. Now, how M.N.Roy looked at Gandhi, and coming to that portion. Gandhi, as we said, had moral and ethical considerations in fighting the British. One of his saying is, you get the sin, but don't get the sinner. Be sympathetic. He used to say, we fight against the British, but we don't hate the people of Britain. So some of the critics of Gandhi used to say, I think this is just hypocrisy. How can you fight the Britishers without fighting the British people? He said that is a wrong approach. And till the end, he stuck to his mantra. No, our fight is not against Britain, British people. It is against the British colonial rule. I think it was a tremendous strength that Gandhi had. And when people were making fun of him, he said, don't worry, first they means your opponents. They ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight with you, then you win. This is absolutely logical and correct. This is what happened in the life of Gandhi. First they ignored, then they made fun of him, they laughed at him, then they started fighting with him, and finally he one, the major pattern. And M.N.Roy says Lenin was absolutely democratic. There was nothing dictatorial or dictator in Lenin. Lenin was loved by all his followers, ordinary workers, people. He was not feared, he was loved. Similarly, Gandhi. And when Gandhi was assassinated, Albert Einstein said, it would be very difficult for the future generations to believe that a man like Gandhi walked on this planet Earth. And ironically, even today, in his own land, where he was born and fought, hardly anyone remembers the kind of life he conducted and the kind of struggles he conducted. So that is the greatness of Gandhi. Many social, economic and political evils of violent nature are dancing around in India and everywhere today. Caste, communal conflicts, atrocities against the poor, the weaker sections are steadily rising even in India after 75 years of independence. The global scenario is no different. If Gandhi were alive today, because he wanted to live up to 120 years. Had he not been killed, he would have died only in 1990. But I think the burden was relieved, as he himself said much earlier. He would not allow the present day happenings without fighting. Gandhi was not a pacifist. Gandhi was not an onlooker. And he was not just a witness, he was a participant. So that core of Gandhian struggle should be remembered. Whatever the criticism against Gandhi from many quarters, one thing about Gandhi cannot be denied. His love for the poorest of the poor and his total rejection of communal mindset, untouchability and greed of all varieties. His faith in the ordinary people, his hope in the villages, his conviction of non-violence, all these things have a lot to give us. Now, from the practical experience and people's movements, one can deduce that Gandhi understood the backwardness and the cultural orientation of understanders of Indian masses better than anybody else. Including M.N.Roy, they were all wondering how Gandhi was able to mobilize people. And as Roy himself says, he spoke in the language which the common people could understand. And he spoke in their idiom. And that's how he mobilized them. And the Quit India movement, which was started in 1942, was a hallmark. Certainly Gandhi would not have accepted the power politics played by various political parties today, the mass corruption, massive corruption, all kinds of unethical practices in the name of democracy and development. Democracy and development, these are the slogans. If you want to destroy rivers, destroy forests, and cause all kinds of environmental disasters, which Sanjay Saab will be able to say more. He is fighting all PALs. These things Gandhi would not have allowed. Gandhi's concerns for morality and ethics, means and ends. If you use wrong means, you cannot have right ends. That was his core philosophy, which finds reflection in M.N.Roy. Ethics, morality, means and ends. It is a very strange combination. Both did not like each other. Although Gandhi didn't have any personal hatred, M.N.Roy did not have any personal hatred. He respected Gandhi a lot. But the Gandhian outlook, Gandhian values, Gandhian symbols, the religious paradigm, he fought till the end. But when Gandhi was assassinated, M.N.Roy was gracious enough to say, I see humanism in Gandhi. I accept it. But then, the values and the outlook that Gandhi has developed very soon will turn into its opposites. The people who are talking about Gandhi will be the ones who will do everything exactly the opposite of what Gandhi believed in. Now these things cannot be pressed aside. They are all happening everywhere. Then we talked about the party politics. How political parties want only power. It's not today. He talked about it in 1940, 1946, 47. They are not really capable of developing any democratic values. These parties will organize people, show them some kind of tamasa on the streets, then entertain them, get their votes, and they will do everything against the interests of the people. It was really astonishing. Was he talking about those times? Or he was talking about what is happening today? Take any party politics. It is so true, so contemporary, and therefore it becomes very, very important for us to consider M.N.Roy's contribution. He talked about the flip side of Gandhian methods and values, and he thoroughly subjected every view of Gandhi to a critical inquiry, scrutiny. When the unity of India was truncated by partition and the communal violence devoured more than 2 million people, both in India and Pakistan, Gandhi's mission of non-violence practically ended. When he could not be protected from the bullet of an assassin, another tragedy of Mahabharata proportions started in India. Political morality, ethics, and democracy in India received a severe blow with the disappearance of Gandhi from the political scene of India. Jawaharlal Nehru, of course, till he was alive, he was a Democrat and he tried to save the democratic values to the extent possible. But after Nehru's death, Gandhi became a mere idol of worship, and respect for his principles of non-violence became a ritual. The military might of the Indian state, this goes completely against the spirit of Gandhiism. He never believed that a mighty Indian state will be the dream of Gandhi. All these things are happening, and the standards and quality demonstrated by the political parties, the players of all ideologies, including the communists, turned into the most unintended ironies of Gandhi. He dreamt of a different India, but what is happening is something very different. But then Gandhian methods are used in different places. In the USA for civil rights, in South Africa by Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King Jr. in the USA, they all used. Even in Palestine, Gandhian methods are used now, where every day people are throwing bombs at each other. Not that people are averse to politics, but political parties of all states have thoroughly lost their moral and ethical values in every country, not only in India. And therefore, what M.N.Roy said some 85 years ago becomes much more relevant today. The sum and substance of Roy's radical humanism, his concerns for individual freedom, morality and ethics, in the practice of even the noblest political theories, the inseparable nature of means and ends have so much in common with Gandhi's practices and classical Marxism. This is my main argument. However, while Mahatma's worldview was shaped by religious, medieval ethics with an invisible humanist core inside him, personality, M.N.Roy's worldview was shaped by 3 clear successive stages of his intellectual and philosophical transformation. First as a nationalist, Jatinda, Aravinda Ghosh, and all. Then international socialism. He had absolute faith. But then, after the Second World War, and in fact after the death of Lenin, he started having so many doubts and queries. Reason, romanticism, and revolution, they all blended into the thinking of Roy. Because without reason, he will not accept anything, subject everything to rationality. then an element of romanticism is always there in every revolutionary. Without that romantic temperament, one would not become a revolutionary. They would go in search of safe homes and safe jobs, safe hiding places. So a romantic element is always part of a revolution. And then what kind of revolution? That is Roy's main preoccupation. M.N.Roy very correctly differed with Lenin when they were talking about colonial struggles in India. He differed from Lenin's thinking because he thought Gandhi was essentially a reactionary, not personally, but his ideology. And his vision of India was medieval, and therefore would not help India to become a modern, democratic and progressive country in the long run. Now it is for us to re-examine, review whether Roy was correct or not. At times I tend to think probably Roy should have listened to Lenin. He should have worked with Gandhi, and then eventually he should. But these are our weird wishes. It did not happen. But today, what the three people have said, they have a lot to contribute. Because in a contemporary situation, whether it is Gandhi and Roy, Gandhi and Subhash Bose, Gandhi and Nehru even, Nehru was so pretty close to politics. What is happening right now is, everywhere you see a kind of anarchy and the lack of values, and the people are the least important in this kind of game. And ultimately what happens? Exploitation continues, inequality increases, and the corporate sector, whether crony capitalists or national capitalists or international capitalists, multinationals, they are the ones who thrive. So in the name of development, you show increased GDP, but that increased GDP, when you look at actually what is happening at the ground level, inflation, unemployment, poverty, inequality between the haves and the have-nots, this GDP, this development, this growth hardly has any meaning. And that's why I proposed a different kind of economic cooperation in agriculture, in industry, in manufacturing. In all these, I think he had such a foresight which we have to take it very seriously. So, to conclude, M.N.Roy's views on radical humanism and his profound skepticism on party politics that promote selfishness, power struggle, and the continuing success of demagogy, electoral frauds, immorality are absolutely true, not only in India, but in all other so-called democracies, including the most powerful democracy, the USA. The global crisis is not merely economic, but a total crisis of humanity's inability to find its own place in the planet and in the universe. Roy talks about it extensively. He effectively and passionately raises some fundamental questions which cannot be answered without addressing the crisis in confidence, morality, and ethics. It is not an academic or intellectual question, but about the basic survival and further progress of humanity when it is unable to take advantage of the science and technology which is already available. If we use science and technology, many of these things can be easily solved, but rationality doesn't function here. Only profit and power. That similarly, the basic insecurity generated by violence has led to nuclear weapons, nuclear winners, uncontrolled economic and social inequalities, environmental disasters. Now in this kind of situation, how to talk about a superior ideology which cannot deal with these things at the global level? In global context, as I see, the class struggle continues in different forms and in varying intensities. Private property is still the root cause of the hiatus of all the artificial scarcities, conflicts, violence, and wars, cleverly covered by terminologies of free markets. Lenin, Gandhi, and Roy have much in common to complement each other in shaping a new world order. I'm not talking about the present, but a new world order has to emerge on the basis of superior consciousness. Because consciousness is not alien to Marxism. Consciousness plays a very, very critical role. Marx himself said, when the ideology grips the imagination of the workers, then the ideas become the weapons. That's why he talks about the weapon of criticism should replace the criticism of the weapons. You criticize, it becomes a weapon. When this is ready to take head on the criticism of the weapon, that is, if you are attacked with violence, your ideas should give you the strength to see how that weapon can be defeated, then your consciousness becomes superior. That's why History and Class Consciousness by Lukács is still a very, very important book. And consciousness is one thing which is not alien to Marx, Lenin, Roy, Gandhi, or any other humanist philosopher. So when consciousness is the key, I think that is talked about by Arundhati and so many others in a moralistic, spiritual way. Consciousness is the one which has to be developed, which in my simple understanding means education. You educate the people, you tell the people the truth, let them realize, let them organize, let them agitate, and then let them change the world. And how it can be done, it is our responsibility to find out. Thank you so much.
थैंक यू। अब संजय पारिक साहब से मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूँगा कि आप आज के सब्जेक्ट पर पूरा। थैंक यू।
It's a wonderful lecture by Professor Ramanujam, highly thought-provoking. And as I feel when I was looking at this topic, how it will be possible to really comprehend and come out with a synthesis of the ideas which are expressed by these three great personalities. As a matter of fact, I was a little privileged because he shared with me not the final one, but I think the final draft. And I went through it and I was so excited, I immediately called him. I said, "You have done a wonderful job." I think the complaint by his wife that he was virtually preparing like for some board examination was absolutely correct and justified she was. Because you must be spending, I think, your entire time. When you told me at least for 10 days, you were completely engrossed in preparing this lecture. We are very thankful to you, we are very grateful to you. And as a matter of fact, I do not know how much you are able to imbibe from these things which are stated, because each statement and each step, according to me, is very, very important. And we have the lecture with us, we will be able to go through it and probably understand it in a final way. The book which Professor Ramanujam mentioned, that we used to discuss sometimes about Mr. M.N.Roy, and I had this book with me. And I must tell you, I was then thinking how this book, which is Memoirs by M.N.Roy, came to me. Shri Aurobindo's elder brother, Shri Aurobindo's younger brother, Barin, you know, worked with M.N.Roy. M.N.Roy was actually inspired by Barin. Shri Aurobindo's elder brother's son was very close to me, we were very close. And then he came and stayed with me. And he had lots of very precious and important books. So he just donated to my library. He said to keep the books there. This book was there when Professor Ramanujam said whether you have any book on M.N.Roy. I had seen that book, I had not gone through it, to be very frank. But then That's how that book came, and therefore that book must have inspired because it came from the source, Sri Aurobindo, who initially was the guru of M.N.Roy in one sense, besides Swami Vivekananda and Bankim Chandra and so many others. I was just looking at Professor Ramanujam has mentioned about 3 phases, the revolutionary phase and thereafter his participation there in the understanding the Marxian philosophy and thereafter change, the radical humanism. These are the 3 phases which you mentioned. I was looking at the first and second phase. I don't want to elaborate on it. I'll take 5 or 10 minutes. The first phase, where he was actually a revolutionary and a nationalist. As I said, that he was inspired by Bankim Chandra, Vivekananda, Sri Aurobindo, Jatindra Mukherjee and so many others. At a very, very young age, I think he was in Howrah conspiracy case, he spent 9 months in jail. So this was that he was exposed at that time with this kind of a freedom movement. I must tell you why I am struggling and what I am trying to aim at. I had put a question to Professor Saab. I said, please tell me one thing, that M.N.Roy was such a great intellectual and he understood actually Marxian philosophy so well that he had courage even to differ with Lenin. Then what happened? How this transition came and this transformation came? That he switched on to radical humanism, and the crux of radical humanism, if we think in terms of what he himself explained, is the freedom, the ultimate freedom of the mind. Because when he said about revolution, the entire idea changed. The idea changed because he said revolution has to be first of all within. Now, when we talk of revolution within, M.N.Roy probably had the materialistic thing in his mind because he never used the term consciousness. What you have said actually at the end of the lecture, he did not use the term consciousness, which Sri Aurobindo used. So I am going to really point out how this transition came in my understanding, whatever little I could gather from the articles. So if we look at the first phase, which was a nationalist and a revolutionist, M.N.Roy was, and 1915 he left. Mahatma Gandhi came in 1915. So therefore there was no interaction between the two. M.N.Roy had immense kind of an understanding of the Indian freedom struggle, which Mahatma Gandhi did not have. Because he spent time, that is said from 1893 to 1914 in South Africa. Though the seed of what is required to be done in India in freedom struggle was sown at that time, particularly the ahimsa and non-violent kind of movement, and how really we can win the situation at that particular juncture. But then Gandhiji was not exposed to the real struggle which was being going on, where Sri Aurobindo and others were participating, which M.N.Roy knew. Now M.N.Roy came here, and then what has been said by Lala Lajpat Rai in his diaries is mentioned that when he was in New York, it is at that time sitting in the library that he was exposed to Marxism. So he started reading Marxism somewhere in 1917, 1918, I suppose. That was the exposure. Now you can understand a person who is initially brought up, and then he was in a traditional kind of a home. Father was a Sanskrit teacher, and then they were virtually inspired by the hereditary priests, as they call them. They were there. So he had grounding in Upanishads and all the philosophies, Hindu philosophy as such. All of a sudden the transition came, and then he started reading the Marxian philosophy, and then at that time he differed with Lenin. I am not going to that particular part. That phase goes up to 1930. 1930. Now after 1930, where my real point is coming, is that he was arrested in 1931 in the Kanpur conspiracy case. For lawyers it will be interesting that initially he was charged under section 121A that is waging war against the. But the conspiracy allegations were of 1924. 1924 he was not here. He was somewhere, I think, Germany or maybe some other place. In Moscow, Germany somewhere. So then they thought, the Britishers, that 121A cannot be imposed on him because he is not there. So they brought in the sedition, 124A. You must understand how sedition was used. 124A is that any thought which is expressed show you your kind of a displeasure against the government. So they brought in 124A. Jawaharlal Nehru was one person who wanted to meet him at that time. And I must tell you that he was one person who was very much influenced by the intellectual kind of bent of mind of M.N.Roy and the kind of learning he had. Because probably Nehru had the same kind of inclination. But this is how. So he was not allowed to meet M.N.Roy. Ultimately, he was given imprisonment for 12 years. Then he filed an appeal, and I think which was changed to 6 years. Kailashnath Gadju actually argued his appeal. Now, what is important is that 6 years which he spent in the prison, now that brought a transformation in him completely. He was tortured physically and mentally. And because of that torture, he did a lot of introspection. And introspection, he realized that whatever he read about Marx was one part of it. And I'm sure that the synthesis must have taken place. Whatever Swami Vivekananda said, whatever Sri Aurobindo said, and everything brought a transformation in him. And he ultimately said that I do not agree totally with the Marxian philosophy, though certainly this idea continued for a very long time. After 1940, actually 40-42, it is crystallized, the radical humanism. Before that, there were so many other things which took place, and I'm going to mention briefly about that. But I must tell you what Nehru said about in his autobiography. He is one person who was very much, as I said, influenced by M.N.Roy because of his vast kind of experience and the intellectual ability. M.N.Roy, when he came out from the prison, that is to say, in 1936, the first thing which he wrote was Marxism is not dogma, where he said these are the limits of Marxian philosophy. That's the first thing he wrote. Nehru, in his autobiography, has virtually said the position of M.N.Roy, that how he was isolated. He has put it very nicely. What he says is, and I'm quoting, I was attracted to him because of his remarkable intellectual capacity. I was attracted to him because he seemed such a lonely figure, deserted by everybody. The British government was naturally after him. Nationalist India was not interested in him, and those who were called communists in India condemned him as a traitor to the cause. This was the pathetic situation in which M.N.Roy was put. After he came out from the jail, first time he met Gandhiji was in Faizpur session, that was in 28th of December 1936. And they met each other, they had a discussion for nearly 90 minutes. But in 90 minutes after discussion, they did not agree on anything with whatever M.N.Roy, because M.N.Roy was also he was honest to whatever he thought. Not that because, as he rightly pointed out, a towering personality like Lenin, when he could say something, then naturally when Mahatma Gandhi was there, he could very well say, no, these are my thoughts. They disagreed. Mahatma Gandhi told him, I said, no, your view will change. You come for the evening Prarthana Sabha, which M.N.Roy declined. He said, no, I'm sorry, Gandhiji, I cannot come. But Gandhiji actually conveyed later on 27th of July 1937, and this letter is somewhere mentioned, I do not know whether you have seen that letter. What he advised him, he wrote to M.N.Roy directly. He said, stay out of Indian politics and just render mute service. This is in the letter. So differences between Gandhiji and Roy, they persisted for a very long time. And then, as you know, the idea of Constituent Assembly, which was voted by M.N.Roy, was accepted in 1940 by the Britishers. 1946, when it started, they wanted him to come and say something, but then he had lost all interest in active politics. But he had prepared, yes, he had prepared a note that what are the essential things which should come in the Constitution, and that we need to Constituent Assembly. I do not know whether these ideas were debated by the Constituent Assembly. I didn't see that particular part. I had no time to see that particular contribution, whether it was looked into by. Now, what I was pointing out was that this enlightenment which came to M.N.Roy during his confinement, and out of these 6 years, there were so many periods which were spent in solitary confinement. Shri Aurobindo, in the Alipur bomb case, on 1/5/1908 he was arrested and released in May 1909. He has written a book, Kara Kahini, The Prison Tales, and he has mentioned about the torture he underwent. Torture in the sense, he thought that his entire mind will blast because he was not able to concentrate on anything. And he said for months together, he saw certain ants which are going on the wall, creeping on the wall, and then he concentrated on that. And all of a sudden there was an expansion, as if the prison doors broke, and he saw the vision of Krishna everywhere. So it was a spiritual kind of enlightenment which took place as far as Sri Aurobindo is concerned. And according to me, that was the breaking point of Sri Aurobindo when leaving the active politics and going to Pondicherry and following the spiritual path. He very sad that I know now that India is going to be free. I must now prepare for the free India, what people should imbibe. That is to say their culture, their tradition, etc. etc. That's what Sri Aurobindo. M.N.Roy similarly, as I think that there was a transformation inside, and there was a vision which he saw, because he, like Sri Aurobindo, also saw Swami Vivekananda, Ramakrishna Paramahansa, then Krishna. He must have thought about all those things, and there was a change in him, and he broke through this entire thing of the Marxian philosophy, and ultimately said that this is the way that the freedom of the mind, which is important, the revolution within is important. Revolution within him, as far as he is concerned, may be a materialistic point of view. For Sri Aurobindo, it was spiritual, but that was the breaking point. I am trying to just draw a parallel between the Guru and Shishya and how this thing took place in terms of. Now I'll just end it. That look at this particular idea of M.N.Roy with regard to radical humanism, what he said, and see the spiritual insight into it. Spiritual insight into it. It is the same thing which we talk about. Though he never accepted because he was a non-believer. And it's all right, because non-believers, according to me, are great spiritual people than those who believe. What he said was, the function of life is to live. The basic incentive of organic becoming is the struggle for life and survival. This struggle goes on throughout the long process of biological evolution, through every phase of human development, until in man, it becomes the conscious urge for freedom, the supreme human value, which you mentioned, supreme consciousness. Sri Aurobindo talked about supreme consciousness, that's a different supreme human value. Man is finite while his universe is infinite. In the final analysis, the universe is his environment. The innate urge for freedom in man drives him to conquer his environment by knowing it well and fully. Now look at the beautiful kind of idea which he had put here and talks about freedom. And he says ultimately, in one sentence, and I am going to end there, he says the progress of the society is measured by the amount of freedom it gives to man. And this is the sutra, the mantra on which we should judge ourselves today and find out what is happening, whether we are able to enjoy that kind of a freedom. in any sphere of life, if the freedom is not there, then what Gandhiji said, what Lenin said, and what M.N.Roy said is something which is totally today's dispensation is failing us. And the value which all of us should have of freedom, of understanding ourselves, is being lost in this process. Thank you very much. I took a little long, but I thought it was important. I again thank the Professor Ramanujam because it was his lecture. I only
3-4 questions, maybe another 10-15 minutes, because normally what happens, people come and speak and then go away. But if there are questions, I think they should be welcomed and should be debated.
Sir, one question. Sir, I just wanted to know your views. Politics and direction means first is religion, second is caste, third is liquor, fourth one is money. Why are these philosophers and all those people who are not to actualize these things and take some kind of measures? Because it is quite disturbing in some states where the money is flowing like a ocean it is flowing. In some states, not in all states. There, the impact of this war is very dangerous to be whatever you may say, freedom or you may say democracy here. That is why they are trying to visualize these things.
Thank you. Because in spite of backwardness in all other spheres, people were not that degenerated. They could disagree with them. Gandhi could disagree with M.N.Roy. Bose could disagree with Gandhi. Jinnah could disagree with Gandhi. But none of them, I don't see any evidence that they have descended to this kind of degradation. This degradation was certainly visualized by M.N.Roy when he talks about parties, politics, and democracy in backward countries. Even he did not visualize liquor and money. He said people would be shown some kind of entertainment, like the circus, and their votes will be purchased, and then something against the people will be done. But this one is a recent phenomenon. I come from a state where money for every vote decides the outcome. That is Tamil Nadu. And the turning point was Thirumangalam by-election. For each vote, they paid, I think, something like 3,000 or 10,500. And 95% polling, which you cannot imagine. Average polling is between 60 to 70. It's a very good polling. But in Thirumangalam, 95% voting. This was ensured by a Dravidian party which boasts of Dravidian model and all that. Now this is slowly spreading to Kerala, Karnataka, and it will spread to North India. Although North India suffers from so many other things like booth capturing, violence, using guns and all this. Now the important point is why the leaders could not visualize. They thought they would transcend these things. But unfortunately, as M.N.Roy predicted, the symbols used, Rama, Hanuman, or any religious symbol, all these things take the people away from their actual backwardness to a bottomless pit. There people lose their critical faculty. They don't even think why we should be giving our vote for money and how 1/4 of country liquor or Indian made foreign liquor and one packet of biryani can guarantee democracy to them, because they have been completely trapped. In one particular context, Marx talked about religion as opium. Rather sympathetically, the people do not find any solution. They at least get solace thinking about heaven, where they will get some kind of relief. But here it's a different kind of opium. It really drugs the people. Democracy has already been drugged completely. There is no value for democracy in India. And that's why M.N.Roy's book on politics and parties in India has so much of value. I was really astonished to see how he was able to see this kind of degeneration so many years ago, 70, 80 years ago. So my answer to that question is, they never thought people would fall so low.
Just want to add one thing. Sorry, I want to add one thing. That M.N.Roy was against the parliamentary democracy. And he said the parliamentary democracy is inadequate because it does not give opportunity to masses for direct participation in governance. And there is no real freedom unless there is a radical democracy. So he talked about the radical democracy. He said this parliamentary democracy is not because they all become MPs and MLAs who elect. They become the source of power, the center of power, and doesn't go to the people. They don't have any say in governance.
He also said full participation. 100% participation is not there in parliamentary elections or in parliamentary debate. That's M.N.Roy's concept. Yeah.
Does it not appear that the concept of dictatorship of profiteering, as well as the concept of radical humanism, as well as the concept of utopia, as that all of them have turned out to be utopian ideas, and with their limitations and with, in effect, no linkage to practicality?
First of all, this concept of dictatorship of the proletariat at that time was very revolutionary because the proletariat constituted the majority of the society. And it was interpreted by Lenin. Now what you have is the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, who are the minority. And their dictatorship cannot be tackled without some kind of firm measures. That will be the dictatorship of the proletariat. In other words, the dictatorship of the majority of the people on a handful of capitalists will be easy to implement. But that would have happened only when at the world level socialism had triumphed. German revolution had succeeded. Without that, what happens? In order to save socialism in one country, dictatorship of the proletariat degenerates into dictatorship of the party elite. That's a danger. And that Roy also pointed out. And what is happening in China now? For namesake, Chinese Communist Party is the only party there. But workers who must have got so much of relief from the large-scale production, they have to work for 12 hours now. So it's a kind of irony. State capitalism, though in the name of Communist Party of China, in the name of the workers, their burden has increased. Now this kind of dictatorship was not visualized initially. So even now, the meaning of dictatorship of proletariat has to be reinterpreted, and the Gram Swarajya, Panchayat Raj, and M.N.Roy's cooperative economic models, all of them have so many common features. They have to be brought together, and then we have to see whether some practical shape can be given. When I think about Panchayat Raj, where there is so much of corruption, even in this 100 days Manrega scheme, people are again and again bribed, and their moral values are completely shattered. But when they become conscious and when they become cooperative participants, I think Indian economy, whether it is in the rural area or in the manufacturing sector, will touch new heights, and there you will have a different kind of political culture.
All of these concepts, as a project, they look like a utopian idea, and really having a practical.
But mostly what happens in history, most of the noble ideas, they are utopian. They are dreams.
They are dreams actually.
Russia for dictatorship or proletariat cannot say it is an idea. It executed in 1917 in process.
It was there. It was there for some time. I don't know whether you read about the subordinates. Saturday workers. Subod, the Mia means Saturday. Under the dictatorship of the proletariat, workers were given the freedom. Look at the expression. They were given the freedom to come as volunteers and produce more in the factories. That's how they bridged the gap between USA and the USSR in less than 30 years. What Europe took more than 3 centuries. They become another superpower because of the voluntary labor. Voluntary labor does not have any kind of coercion. It is fired by the kind of utopia that we have to equal first and then overtake USA. That's the thing. And the dictatorship also worked because corruption was almost nil. And then violence against women and poor people. I think till the collapse of Soviet Union, Moscow was the safest city for women. They could come and go any time of the day or night. So those things were there. To some extent, dictatorship or the proletariat worked in the original sense. But afterwards, I think that the party apparatus, slowly they lost touch with the revolutionary core of Marxist ideology. And after Stalin had so many drawbacks, that's a different matter, but Stalin was not personally responsible. After Stalin, the Soviet Communist Party completely neglected ideological education, ideological training. Otherwise, they would not have gone into this arms race trap. Arms race is useless. What is the use of having 10,000 nuclear warheads in Russia, another 12,000 in the USA, whereas one nuclear warhead can destroy the entire humanity? That
It was the condition of First World War, where Lenin
yes.
called the corruption soldiers. I want to know whether it was all-time slogan of Lenin, all-time call for
No, it was not before the World War. When the World War took different turns, in the Russian army started losing everywhere. Soldiers were fed up with the Tsarist commands. They were not obeying the commands. They started leaving, throwing their weapons, and then started running towards their homes. That and the slogan was bread and peace. Peace for the soldiers and bread for the soldiers in their families. That was the slogan coined by Lenin. And it transformed the entire atmosphere because spontaneously they came and joined workers and peasants. That was a particular moment in history. That was not the original slogan by Lenin.
आप राइटर हैं और आपने काफ़ी आर्टिकल्स लिखे हैं अम्बेडकर साहब पर और M.N.Roy साहब पर, इन्वायरमेंटलिस्ट हैं, रेडिकलिस्ट। प्लीज़ सर आप आइए फोटो प्लीज।
पहले तो मैं पंचोली जी को धन्यवाद करना चाहता हूँ बिकॉज ही हैज बीन कैरिंग दिस टॉर्च ऑफ द रेडिकल यूनिवर्सिटी फॉर सो लॉन्ग। ये रेडिकल लेक्चर्स लगातार होते रहे। ही इज perhaps the only active member so far। और लोग हैं थोड़ा बड़ा बात करते हैं, लेकिन जो ह्यूमन राइट्स ह्यूमनिज्म को साथ लेके चल रहे हैं, he has been very active and I have been associated with the radical humanist movement since 90s। Justice Tarkunde was chief and we have been organizing all these lectures, and I wanted to, because I came here to hear the lecture, and the one thing that was missing is I felt, and I wrote that article of mine long back, because what influenced me on Roy was not what he was speaking about Moscow or Paris or London, but what about the caste system in India? And fortunately, Roy has written a lot about it, which the humanists don't speak about. And Roy Ambedkar relationship, I wrote about it, a very cordial relationship. Dr. Ambedkar, he was the member of the Vice Council. He actually sanctioned 13,000 rupees for the Independent India, the magazine, the Marxist Way, for promoting the anti-fascist ideology. And that was the point which Arun Sori used actually later as a book, Worshipping the Past God, suggesting that Ambedkar actually promoted anti-Gandhi campaign because these people didn't support the 1942 Quit India movement and all those kind of things. So I think coming to Roy's humanism, there are a lot of things which he talked about Lokaya Darshan, he talked about Buddhism, he talked about Sankhya philosophy. There are a lot of things. So I hope we will use these terms in coming days, because if in today's politics we have to fight against the Hindutva politics, we have to speak about a Brahminical system. It was Roy who stood up against Gandhi and said that his book on fascism is one of the best work on fascism in India. I think even today people should read it. So thank you so much, Professor Ramanujam, for your eloquent lecture and so much of details, and people enjoyed it. I also would like to thank Mr. Sanjay Parikh for his presidential remark and presiding over this session. I want to thank Suresh Jainji, Arun Majidi, and all other friends who have spared their time. And it was really good to see so many people coming to the Radical Humanist meeting. Thank you all the Renaissance Club members. You have actually revived it, and I'm happy that we will meet again and again in these platforms. So thank you all for coming together, and on behalf of Renaissance Club and Citizens for Democracy, I wish to thank again to you all, and hope that we will regularly have these kind of discussion and dialogues, particularly related to the Indian situation, where the fascist forces are, fascism is here. Roy wrote long back that Indian fascism will be a cultural fascism, and it is very much among us what we are witnessing today. So thank you so much everyone, and I wish you all strength and coming together again. Thank you.
कि आप लोग उसके अंदर पार्टिसिपेट करें, और मैं अनुरोध करूंगा संजय को लिखकर मैं आपसे